Yes. No.
Alright, so this is the first video in the series that I am deciding to call Unfabricate, which is where I am going to take apart and, if possible, reverse engineer some garments that I have thrifted. These are mostly knits, so I am going to be trying to reclaim them for the yarn. Yesterday, I went to Goodwill and just got a big, huge bag of these very cheap pieces of textile. And yeah, so I thought the first specimen that I'd start with today is a good one because it was very clearly hand knit to me when I saw it in the store. So here it is right here. It's nice, like, terracotta yarn. It feels pretty woolly to me. Funnily enough, it matches my smoothie that I'm drinking. So I could tell it was hand knit, kind of because of its weight. Hand knitters tend to work with heavier yarns, because if you've ever worked with lace weight yarns, and most commercial knits are like if you get a sweater from like Gap or something, or like Uniqlo, a big commercial brand, it's going to be a very fine gauge knit, which not a lot of hand knitters find fun to work with. Some of the finishing techniques are a little bit inconsistent, which is kind of part of the appeal of a handmade item. And also, maybe probably the biggest indicator, it doesn't have any tags and no evidence of tags that were cut off at some point. So it was probably a hand knit, hand finished garment. It is a short sleeve sweater, has some lace on the front, and it is seamed on the sides. And if you can see from the direction of the stitches, these sleeves were knit as part of the body, it seems like. So my best guess for kind of how this pattern was constructed is that you started at the bottom. The front and back were knit separately. So you started with the front piece, cast on, made the rib. And the ribbing is usually a good indicator of the direction of knitting, because it will show the true direction of which way the knits face. If you're going in the right direction, the knits, and these are twisted these look like it was a twisted ribbing, but you'll see the V of the knit columns opening upwards if it's the direction of the knitting. So we have this piece that was knit in halves, and then it looks like it continued in one piece, so you're working this lace column as you go, and when the knitter got to the armpits, they cast on stitches using some sort of short tail cast on. As I unpick the stitches, I'll probably be able to tell what kind of cast on it was. Added on extra stitches at each side for the sleeves, but not the ribbing, because the ribbing is a different direction of knitting. Continued to the shoulders, and when you got to the collar, it looks like it's a pretty square neckline, so they probably just divided the stitches and continued up the shoulders and bound off the piece there. On the back piece, they didn't have to divide for the neckline, but it does look like there's some slight shaping in the back of the collar, and then they bound off, seamed both pieces together, it seems like, at the shoulders. And normally I would use horizontal mattress stitch to seam a shoulder seam, but they've used some sort of variant which produces a raised ridge along both sides of the seam. Even if that was a mistake, if you do it consistently, it's a feature. And it's a nice looking seam. I like that it has a kind of appeal of its own. And I'm guessing the order of operations was seam the shoulders first, and then you pick up for the sleeve cuffs, because the sleeve cuffs were not knit in the round. They were knit flat and then seamed at the underarms. So once the knitter had seamed the front and back at the shoulders, you had this kind of like cross shape, and you could pick up stitches for each of the cuffs, knit them flat, and then it seems like they would seam up the sides of the torso going up to the underarm and finishing the garment that way. Oh, and then the last one, they would pick up stitches around the collar and knit this ribbing, which flows really nicely into the lace pattern. So it's a really cute pattern. It's personally not my style, but I quite like the color. It may be a bit too flesh tone for me, but it just seems like a nice soft like terracotta pink. So I was interested in reclaiming it for the yarn. Plus I figured it looks about worsted weightish. It's obviously hand knit. If I can reverse engineer this knit by looking at it, then it would probably help guide me when I'm taking it apart and trying to find the loose ends and cut them out and try to just frog it. So yeah, this is my little before video, I think, for this series. And I'm still playing around I'm probably going to play around the format as it goes. It's a very informal kind of like log, and I'm meaning for these to be shorter than podcast episodes because I've been super slow about podcasting. So, yeah, they're just really recording before and afters of my experiments. So when I've finished frogging this piece, I will show you the finished yarn. I have not washed this since getting this from the store. I figured I'll just wash my hands after this, and when I finish unraveling the yarn and I wound it into hanks, I'm gonna wash it anyways, so there's no sense in washing it twice, especially when this could be wool, and I don't want to treat it too harshly at first. After I unravel it, I'll do a burn test to determine the fiber content, and I'll report back to you on that. Let's see how this goes.